Welcome to Thriver Talks with Stephanie and Nalie. I'm Nalie.
And I'm Stephanie.
And today is episode 21 with our Thriver Talks interview.
We are interviewing Thriver Kelly Thomas, who is a triple negative breast cancer thriver. Not only is she a thriver, she's created a community for triple negative breast cancer, and we're so honored to have her on today's episode.
So without further ado, here's episode 21.
Episode 21, that's crazy.
Thriver Life. What up, Kelly?
Hey! Let's do this.
We are in Miami still. Recording another episode of Thriver Talks. Actually, you know, it's ironic because we met you exactly a year ago here at Miami Breast.
It's so symbolic.
It's our year anniversary.
Yeah.
Happy 1 year.
Happy anniversary, you guys. I got you something. No, this is our thing, you know. Come to Miami Breast, come to the Fontainebleau, and, you know, live our best life.
So I have to say, like, just off the bat or out, is that last year, meeting the Kelly last year and the Kelly today is like two different people. And that's amazing because we should all evolve and grow. But I'll never forget when we first met you, and I'm just going to keep it real because that's what we do, is we were by the pool and you were so scared, or you were in this state of fear still. And I remember we all shared like a very emotional moment meeting you, and to see you and all that you've done in this past year, and now you're like, I mean, it's incredible what you've done. And to me, that's like, you are a thriver. Like, you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. So, I mean, you're amazing. So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
It's pretty amazing. So,
Maybe we could start sharing your story. When did this journey begin?
I was 33 years old when I was diagnosed with stage 3 triple negative breast cancer. I don't have breast cancer in my family. One of those many stories everybody hears. I always went to my doctor, and one day I folded my arms on my couch and I felt a lump, which was very surprising to me because I always checked myself. And, I never felt anything before, but it was so large. Mm-hmm. And I thought, how the heck could I have missed this? And not thinking that it would be anything, my sister had benign breast lumps, and lo and behold, they're telling me it's stage 3C. Thought we caught this early, and it was anything but.
So what's the difference between stage 3C and 4?
But also because a lot of our listeners tend to have metastatic. Also, Steph and I are both ER/PR positive, HER2 negative, and we're happy to be speaking with you because we hear so much about triple negative breast cancer and how that's a journey on its own. So maybe tell us a little bit about your diagnosis.
So as you guys already know, there's 3 receptors that they test for, and if you test positive for estrogen, there's a drug that they can target that, and if you have the HER2 growth, they have a drug to target that. But with triple negative, it's like you have empty targets in your body, and the only thing that doctors really prescribe is chemotherapy. And our cancer is known very well for responding to this the best. And occasionally, occasionally small flukes. Sometimes it's chemo resistant.
And this is me just being totally not knowing, but 3Bs that goes to the nodes, like your lymph nodes?
Yeah, I believe like the difference with the lettering depends on how many nodes are affected.
Mm-hmm. So did you have a lymph node dissection and nodes affected?
Yeah. So my story's a little strange. So I had the biopsy, and they saw that I had 5 masses. I actually had 2 in my left breast, 3 in my armpit. And they checked the lymph nodes, and they found that triple negative was in there. But fast forward to finishing chemo, and during my mastectomy, they found cancer in my lymph nodes, but this time it wasn't triple negative. It was estrogen positive.
Wow.
Which I sat down with my oncologist, and he just buried his head in his hands. And I'm like,
Just
what do we
like
do?
a rare case.
It's like you always hear that, like, oh, this happens at 3%, this happens at 10%. You know, it's like keep hitting these like low percentages. And I felt like every time like I heard a statistic about something, and it was like, oh, this only happens to certain percentage of people. I'm like, I don't do good with those low percentages. Like, that could be me. But
And just in triple negative is rare, right? It's like the rarest type
yeah,
of
it
breast
only,
cancer.
out of all breast cancer cases, it only makes up for 15 to 20%.
So what type of treatment did you do?
So we started with 16 rounds of chemo. I did 4 of the Red Devil, and I did 4 of Taxol and 8 of Taxol and 4 of carboplatin. After that, I had a double mastectomy. They found a little bit of ER in there, which my doctor said that it looked like cancer cloners. Like you can actually have second mutations. Like you're getting the chemotherapy, and the cancer doesn't want to die; it wants to live. So it starts to change the DNA in these cancer cells. And when you're receiving chemotherapy for, say, triple negative, you start growing estrogen cancer. That estrogen is like bobbing and weaving, you know?
Yeah.
Did that, cried my tears because tears don't fix cancer, right? Doesn't get rid of what you're going through. After that, I started my reconstruction, where I would go to my plastic surgeon every week, and I would get my fills. Once that was done, I did 28 rounds of radiation. And then while that was done, I did an additional 6 months of oral chemotherapy, Xeloda.
Wow.
So I have to say, just like knowing you for the past year and knowing you on social media, I think it's amazing that you've created a community specific to triple negative breast cancer. It's at TNBC Thrivers, right?
Yes.
On Instagram. And Kelly, your personal page is at Talk is Cheap.
XO.
XO. So that in itself is amazing that you've created a community for like the underserved, underheard women in the breast cancer community. But I think most notably what you've done in the past year is you've totally transformed, like emotionally and physically.
That's what I wanted to say when you were saying how different she was. I was like, can we just talk about all this weight loss?
Oh my
because like I gained weight after chemotherapy.
Oh yeah, definitely being on the hormonal drugs.
Exactly. Sure. And holy crap, following you on Instagram has been so inspiring. You are a beast. Can you please share on Thriver Talks your secret?
So, okay. When I got diagnosed with cancer, Jersey Shore just came back on the air. And I am not embarrassed to say that. And I just so happened to get chemo on Thursdays, and Jersey Shore is on Thursdays. So we had a whole routine. We would spend all day at the hospital, go home, have dinner, and we watch Jersey Shore. My mom, it would be me, my husband, and my mom, and that was our thing. And Vinny on Jersey Shore, Keto Guido, he started talking about the ketogenic diet and being keto, and how he had extra weight on him. And I was like, oh, you know, because you're not allowed to lose weight during chemo. So I'm like, oh, when I get permission, I want to try this keto thing, because I really watched my carbs. And I mean, not all the time. I would try to. So jumping into such a restrictive diet wasn't too far-fetched for me. I'm not a sugar person. So they're like, oh, you have to drop your sugars. You can't have candy anymore. I'm like, big deal. So once I believe it was like, I started keto about right after I finished radiation. So it was about like a year ago, a year and a couple months. Yeah, I started like figuring out what I need to do, and you have to calculate your macros and do this calculator and do that calculator. And then once you master that, you can do it in your head. And I'm like, awesome, because who wants to be like counting calories, counting macros, like what'd you eat and log that? And I started seeing the weight fall off, and I'm like, yes, because I've been someone that I was very fit when I was younger. I was on the gymnastics team.
Wow.
I was a cheerleader. I did like all these sports, and like towards like my 20s, you start to find a job, and I started to switch, my passion for like taking care of myself to how am I going to climb the corporate ladder and, put the work in and the hours, and I kind of like ate whatever, and I really didn't care about myself. I started to gain weight. And there's nothing more frustrating if you're dealing with like trying to lose weight. There's so much yo-yo diets, like you're dieting, you're working so hard, and you see that scale say 2 pound gained, and it's like, well, then I give up. I don't want to do this anymore. So doing keto really matched with me because I'm a salty foods person, and I started seeing the weight fall off.
So what was like your like highest weight? How
so
heavy were you?
I was diagnosed at 160 pounds, and I'm 5'2", so that's considered overweight. I went through chemo. I gained 13 pounds, which, talking to other people, was actually not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
That brought me up to 173, which technically is obese for a 5'2" girl.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through cancer treatment, and you're fighting this crazy cancer, and you never imagined you'd be going down this road. And you can either go back to the way that you always lived, right? Or you could kind of see this as like a new beginning. And I really feel like this is like my new life, like transformation of KWOW 2.0, okay? Yeah. That's my new hashtag, okay? Like we need to change. And also I was very into like learning, like I want to know everything about triple negative because I don't want this coming back. I want to champion for so many triple negatives out there. Like I want people to be like, oh my God, like Kelly had this, she was almost stage 4, and she had all these hurdles, and then she had a different cancer growing in her, but look at her, like she is thriving, because there is nothing more terrifying than having a triple negative diagnosis.
Well, I think you're saying you want to. I think you're doing it. Exactly. You're already doing it.
Well, yeah. Kelly 2 years ago is not the Kelly sitting here right now.
Well, that's amazing. That's all, like, we want to grow and change like throughout our entire life. And I think like some people take a long time to change, but any movement forward is movement forward. But you've like hit the ground running, which is really, really like commendable. And there is one thing that I remember that always stuck in my head, because in addition to doing the keto diet, I see you exercising, and you started a hashtag like exercise for survival.
Okay. Yes.
So how did that all come to be?
So that was almost a year ago. I started that. So like, again, I want to learn everything about breast cancer and triple negative. And I'm honored to be a patient of my oncologist is the head of the oncology in his hospital. And so he does a lot of lectures. And I go to all of his breast cancer lectures.
Of course you do.
So he did a lecture last year with Susan G. Komen about complementary therapies that, you would do in conjunction with, your treatment. And he started talking about exercise. And this I still remember, I recorded what he said and I posted this one big thing, and it pretty much broke my Instagram. He said that women that exercise for 150 minutes a week, which is 30 minutes, 5 days a week, have a 40% chance of not dying from breast cancer also have a 40% chance of not having their breast cancer come back. And
That's pretty amazing.
there is no drug. He said there's no drug I could prescribe that has any kind of statistics like that. And it's exercise. Like, everybody can do this.
Which is really interesting because one of the books that we rave about, Radical Remission by Dr. Kelly Turner, in her book, she outlines the 9 key principles of what people have done to achieve or, defy odds or do the unheard of. And actually, I think next month she drops a new book called Radical Hope, I believe it's called. And it's her 10th key factor. And I think it's exercise. Like, the whole book is on exercise, which kind of like ties in with what you're saying is like the power of exercise is pretty remarkable. And that's why I brought it up, because I remember when you put that up on your story, I was like, holy shit, like, it inspired me, because sometimes I hit these points. It's like when I'm on and I'm working out, and when I stop. And so that really like watching you and Dr. Cohen give his talk really motivated me to get up and start moving.
I think so often, like, you feel like nobody wants to exercise. Like, exercising sucks. It's like sweaty and like, I don't have time for it. But, he said that, and it kind of like spoke to me. And so if you follow me, you'll know that I'll make just like random videos. And so I decided to go for a walk, because that was one of the big things he says. Because I worked on my nutrition, because I went through like a year and a half of treatment, and I had no energy to exercise. Like, people would say to me, oh, you can just walk down the street. And I'm like, no, it's not that easy. Like, I get winded. Like, it's not that easy. And when he started talking about exercising, and he goes, you literally walk for 30 minutes, and that's all I'm asking you to do. Mm-hmm. And I was like, walking, that's easy. I could do that. So once I finished my radiation, I started getting a little bit of energy back. I started doing walks, and I started doing stories when I would walk. And I started getting DMs from people that were like, I went out for a walk today because of you. And I want to cry when I say that.
Yeah.
And that made...
It's a big deal to some people, like I say, like I remember when I couldn't walk. So sometimes people think walking is so minimal, but walking's huge. I prefer walking than running even, So walking, like, not to minimize it ever, is like such a great thing to do, especially for someone on the mend or recovering from treatment.
I'm so happy you're mentioning that, because people are probably going to hop on your Instagram and see you doing all these crazy workouts at the gym with like standing on that Bosu ball, like throwing crazy weights. But it's so important that you listen to your body and you start small baby steps, right? And do what you can, but do move your body. Mm-hmm. Even if that just means like putting your arms up in the air and flaring them around for a bit, that actually helps with fatigue. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to exercise, how much weight did you lose?
Can we ask? You don't have to tell us your weight, but a ballpark figure of how much weight you've lost.
53 pounds.
53 pounds. Wow. Goals. Keto and exercise, correct?
Yes. So going back to the exercise for survival. So I was getting people saying, oh, I went out for a walk because you went out for a walk. And I was like, oh, my God, well, now I have to go out for walks every day because we were both keeping each other accountable, right? And so people were tagging me in their videos, and it was awesome. And I'm like, we need to come up with a name for this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, thinking. I'm like, let's just keep it basic. Exercise. Number 4 for survival. Amazing. And I follow that hashtag on Instagram, and like people I don't even know are using it. So
use like the hashtag exercise number 4 survival and get moving.
Yes. Yeah, but like I was a gymnast, so like, and I miss that. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes like when we're working so hard and figuring out who we are, like as professionals. And I was working on being a bank auditor. I worked in banking for 13 years, and I literally held every single job, branch manager, ran offices. I did all these things. And I really put my mental health and my physical health second. And I wouldn't be surprised if because of that, I got cancer or whatever. But I feel so good now, and I probably look the best I haven't looked in like my whole life, and it's so fulfilling to help other thrivers out there.
Well, that's perfect segue to the question I had. So to anyone watching or anyone listening, can you give us like maybe your top 3 resources for anyone who's trying to learn more about their diagnosis or find a community of triple negative thrivers?
Yes. First comes to mind is the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. They are based in New Jersey, and they are absolutely wonderful. They provide funding. Any donation that they receive, 100% goes to funding just for triple negative breast cancer. Living Beyond Breast Cancer is another great organization. They provide a lot of support for all different types of cancers, but triple negatives, we're a little different. So we need a special support. So yeah, those are the two. There's more, but those are the two that stick out in my mind the most, and they've been such great resources for myself.
Yeah, and your pages that we mentioned, and I think it's such a something that we can both relate to is that, sometimes people do think breast cancer is breast cancer, but it's like, even though, yes, we all had a breast cancer diagnosis really young, you are in this like separate world of breast cancer with triple negative, and we're in a very separate world with MBC where a lot of people don't understand. So I think it's really important to build community so people have a voice and people to relate to, and that's why the work you're doing is so needed and important.
Yeah, so I started TNBC Thrivers because I felt personally when I was diagnosed I had an old woman's disease. And I remember sitting in chemo, and I was searching hashtags one day, and I find you doing a dance getting ready to go to chemo. And I'm like, oh my God, this girl is young like me. And I started like clicking on different hashtags. I'm like, oh, triple negative breast cancer. And I'm like, oh my God, there's girls out there just like me. I attended a few events where young women would be there with breast cancer, and we'd sit in a circle and we'd exchange stories. And I learned that the ones that had cancer, they didn't have my cancer. So even though I felt like I was in a community of people like me, I felt alone. And I had a good friend that I talked to all the time on the internet. Her name was Kate, and unfortunately, she passed from triple negative breast cancer. And God, it's gonna make me upset. She said we should start our own group. So I did. When she passed, it was almost like she came to me, like to my head, and I'm like, I'm gonna come up with a group. It's not gonna be about me. It's gonna be about all of us, and we're gonna like tell each other's like stories and like talk about like different like when I was diagnosed, I wanted to find successful stories because if you Google triple negative breast cancer, it is scary. It will basically tell you to plan your funeral right now because you're not going to make it, and that is not true. And I comprise this, and it's just so honorable, and I'm so grateful to have this community of women that want to share their stories because so many people don't, or they're afraid to. And it brings me a lot of joy to run that page. It's a lot of work, but it brings me a lot of joy.
That's what we always say. We do this for our fallen soldiers, our angel thrivers, and we do this for them, right? You're doing a great job, and I'm sure your friend is watching over you.
Yeah, I just wish that she could have saw what she wanted.
She sees.
That's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole nother episode. She sees. So what is now Kelly Thomas's update when it comes to scan results and your health?
I have been NED since July. No evidence of disease, and my oncologist is starting that as of when I finish Solota, because we found that crazy weird fluke of a cancer. And so we wanted to treat this as active treatment. And so I've been out of active treatment since July. And, you know, I got this like second chance at life, right? So like,
you're taking it by the horns. Absolutely. 100%.
NED, triple negative, such a huge inspiration. We wanted to take the time to acknowledge you and tell you we love you and that
I love you.
honestly, please follow Talk is Cheap and TNBC Thrivers.
Yes.
I'm going to link everything in the podcast description as well as on YouTube. So people need to follow Kelly. You are awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you for joining us, and it was such an honor, and I hope to see you next year in Miami.
May this be
our annual tradition.
Oh wait, final thriver. Like, actually, what's your definition of a thriver?
To me, a thriver is anyone that has faced any kind of obstacle. Anyone saying that you can't do this, you're not going to make it, and you continue to persevere and just show the world that here I am and I'm doing it. And yeah, I had triple negative and now I don't.
Well, we're so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you, anyone listening or watching, has been diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer or has someone, a friend or family member, please share this episode with them. Follow Talk is Cheap. Follow TNBC Thrivers. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter on www.thethriversguide.com, where you can get updates about all of our podcast episodes and listen and rate us on all major podcast platforms.
And always remember, where there's a thriver's will,
there's a thriver's way.
Talk to you in the next one. Bye.